Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Miss Shruti Kapoor, co-founder of Wingman, a real-time sales coaching and note-taking tool for reps. Shruti is a graduate of IIM Ahmedabad and has been a part of Y Combinator program back in 2019. Hi Shruti, welcome to ELI.
Thanks, Priya. Glad to be here.
I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So, before starting out Wingman, I spent a decade in finance after my MBA. And a lot of that was, understanding how companies are built, but as an outsider. I'm very passionate about technology. And so 8 years of that decade was spent with a fund called Intellectual Ventures, which invests in early stage technology. And it's a very unique model that Intellectual Ventures was working on, which is working with, inventors. They could be sitting in a lab in a university, or they could be sitting in a garage, but helping them take those ideas to the market, right? And it very often what we see is people who are good at coming up with ideas are not necessarily the best people to take them to the market, and there is like a whole different set of skills that are required. And this is like hardcore tech, right? So material science, life sciences, and also IT. And I spent 8 years doing that. It was really exciting. We were able to take some of very early stage innovations from universities in India to the market. But what kept coming up for me was that I also wanted to get in on the startup game, but didn't kind of maybe have the guts to do it. Decided to join a fintech startup instead when they were just setting up their offices in India. And through that journey, became exposed to B2B sales, became exposed to kind of a little bit closer to the startup world. And that's what got motivated me to start Wingman. And that's kind of also where I discovered the problem that we are solving with Wingman today.
Okay. Uh, we will come to Wingman. Tell us about the problem that you are solving.
Sure. So, I think for anybody who's in sales, they probably realize that a big challenge that they have, either as salespeople or as sales managers, is the entry of data into the CRM, right? So, what happens is you finish that meeting with the customer, and what you really want to do is get on to the next meeting with the next customer, right? Maybe you want to go and send a follow up email to the person you've just spoken to, and but the last thing you want to really do is go and take detailed notes in the CRM, right? So people have done some studies on this, but literally less than 5% of the information from a sales conversation makes its way back into the CRM, right? Which means that you have all of this valuable data that is just getting completely lost. And it's not just data that is useful for the salesperson. It is information that's really important for the sales managers. And it's also important for teams outside of sales. So it's really important for product people to hear what kind of feedback customers are giving on the product. It's really useful for marketing people to hear how the customer is describing their problem. And it's useful, for the CXO to also understand the voice of customer for making better decisions, right? But all of this kind of goes missing, and what you get out of the CRM are pretty looking dashboards based on very little data often. And so that's the problem that we are trying to solve. The approach that we've taken to it is very much centered around the sales team, which means that we want to help sales teams get more successful by getting insights from the data, but by also getting actionable cues from the data, right? We all know what pretty dashboards can do. They can just stay somewhere and then nobody goes and looks at them because they become part of the furniture. But the idea is, how do you take those insights and turn them into actions that can actually improve the performance of the sales team?
Okay. Uh, Now tell us more about the product Wingman. How does it work? And give us some examples of how real life implementation looks like.
Sure. So the way Wingman works is we integrate with different platforms that a sales team uses, right? It's the idea is to be the nerve center of the sales interactions, right? So where do those interactions happen today, right? One is they happen over email, they happen over phone calls, they happen over video meetings like this, right? Um, and so we plug into those systems, and then we plug into CRM, which is kind of your source of truth, where you say this deal has been won, this deal has been lost, or whatever the status, right? So we plug in with those, plus we plug in with your notification systems, right? So something like a Slack. And so what Wingman does is, one, it understands what's happening, at the most granular level within each call. If you, take that one level up, it understands what's happening with that account, right? How good is the communication? Is the customer responding to emails, or is this just one way? Have you had a call with this person in the last 14 days? Are you interacting with the decision maker in that particular company, right? So you're able to aggregate the calls and the emails at the account level to understand what is the health of that relationship. And then from a manager's perspective, they want to be able to aggregate it in a couple of ways, right? They want to be able to aggregate it at the account level so that they can do pipeline reviews. But they also want to be able to aggregate some of this information at the level of each rep, right? So I can say, hey, is Priya doing something better than the rest of the team? And what can I tell the team? So if you're a good performing rep, what can the team learn from you, right? So we aggregate the information at that level. So from a manager's perspective, what the platform then begins to do is it's able to tell you, listen, in all of these deals that you won, we saw these common patterns. Your top performing rep is doing this differently from the rest of your rep. Why don't you go and coach people on this? And then the third part, and which is really important in closing the loop, is it goes and then gives, allows the manager to create these battle cards that can help the sales rep while they are having those interactions, right? So whether that is just before, just during, or just after that conversation, can I tell the sales rep something that will help them make that conversation better?
Okay, fair enough. Now take us through the journey of building this product. To start with, tell us why you decided to work on this idea. There are hundreds of ideas out there to build a product on. Why this idea?
I don't think that there is ever a reason that sounds good when you start doing it, right? In hindsight, you can, of course, come up with quite a few reasons. And I think that's just advice for people who are thinking about how do you decide whether this is the idea that you should work on. Is this a good idea or a bad idea, right? There are a few ways in which I think we evaluated it, and I think maybe also as general advice for others out there. Uh, One, of course, is uh, you know is this something that is only feasible now, right? Is the timing important, right? So if you think of an idea that could have happened 10 years back, right, then maybe there is already solution for it, right? And maybe that's not necessarily an interesting space. To reverse it, right? Another way to look at it is, if you walked into an industry, if you walked into some sort of a setup that makes you think that this could still be the 1980s, right? That means that that space is ready for disruption, right?
Mhm.
So if you think that something is still being managed the old way, then maybe it's a laggard industry, but maybe that is now ready for somebody to go and change something, right? So that's kind of one benchmark, right? Like, why now? In our case, the why now really was that one of the basic foundational elements in the product is taking speech and converting it into text. And speech to text wasn't necessarily available, right, at reasonable accuracy and price, maybe even 5, 6, 7 years back. Right. So when we started this, that was definitely something that was just kind of coming of age. Right. The second part of that was, and this is more personal, which is, did we want to build a B2C company or a B2B company? And we chose to build something that was a B2B company. If people are looking to build a B2B company, it one of the challenges there is how do you even come up with the idea, because you might not be familiar with the problem unless you worked in that space, right? So in some sense, you either have to spend a lot of time if you're not from the space, understanding the problems, leading the life of the persona that you want to solve the problem for. And you know, uh, in our case, that happened naturally because I was doing B2B sales at that point. The third part of it is generally, the kind of founder product fit, right? Are we the right team to build this product, right? Like, suppose you have a degree in life sciences, um, and you want to build something that is, in a different vertical. Are you, maybe you're not the right team, right? So, kind of thinking about what your strengths as a team are, and deciding whether this fits in with that. And fourth is definitely, does this interest you? Because when you're building something, you have to decide whether that's something that you would want to spend the next 10 years of your life on.
Okay, interesting. Um, Now, once you decided to build that, what was the next step? How did you produce the minimum viable product?
Yeah, so once we decided to build this, I think we had a clear picture of, the problem at that point, right? But the solution to the problem, defining what is the first part of the solution that you want to build can be a whole different challenge in itself. The MVP that we decided to build, and I was fortunate that I have two technical co-founders, so we didn't kind of, we had the firepower in house to be able to build stuff. And so the first version of what we wanted to build was just, a nice interface for allowing people to review the sales calls that could get recorded by our platform, right? So, but that in itself meant that we needed to build the plugins to the different systems where people might be having those conversations, like a Zoom meeting. We needed to build in the plug to the CRM data. And then we needed to be able to transcribe those calls and correlate the data with the CRM, and allow for people to get highlights out of those calls. So that was, the basic version. Um,
And once the MVP was ready, how did you find the people to use it?
Yeah. So, in a B2B setting, I think you kind of have to start working with the people who you want to use it even before the MVP is ready. Right. And ideally, you should be speaking to them as part of even deciding what to build. Right. Um, uh, so that's kind of what we did, of course. And I think this is important feedback for people who are just in that journey, is to remember that, your first few customers are going to come from the network, right? And it doesn't have to be people you already know, but people who know somebody or something like that, right? Because the biggest challenge that you face as a startup at that point is not, does this product work? Does this product solve a real problem? All of those, yes, you need to answer. But the biggest challenge that you face is, can I trust you? And do I want to spend, like, whatever time it takes in onboarding your product, setting it up, and giving you feedback? All right. Because that's a cost to me, even if you're not asking me for money. All right. So the biggest hurdle there is the lack of trust, and therefore you have to overcome that hurdle by going to your network.
Okay. And once the MVP was ready and once you got your trial customers, when did you achieve the product market fitment and how?
Um, well, I mean, the question of product market fit, right? Like, the definition itself is somewhat vague, and I don't necessarily like the term product market fit. I mean, I'm not quite sure whether everybody even interprets it the same way. So yeah.
But would you say that a big portion of your existing customers or users of your platform are happy with the product?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we have more than 100 customers today, and pretty much all of them have been stayed on the platform from when they got onboarded. Um, the reason why I think the product market fit definition is somewhat misunderstood is it is not a one time event, right? It's not that you find product market fit and that's it, you've crossed a milestone, right? It's not like, say, turning into an adult at 21, because you it's like a state that you have, and then you need to constantly keep working to retain that product market fit, because the market's needs are going to keep changing, the product needs to keep moving, and so it's a journey, it's not a destination. And I think that's kind of the reason why I'm not a big fan of people kind of thinking of that as a milestone in their journey as a startup. Yes, I mean, our customers love the product. Pretty much all of our new customers come from customer advocacy, which is that, our old customers talking about us and saying, hey, this is a great product. Why don't you check it out? And all of that is great, right? But that doesn't mean that you've achieved the perfect product and, you kind of stop building and start just selling it.
Okay, fair enough. Any pivots that you have done to your product or business model so far?
Yes, I mean, I think that is part of every entrepreneur's journey. We've pivoted. I mean, it's not really been a pivot per se, like it's not been a big change. From day one when we started the company, uh, what we were looking to do has stayed very much the same, which is taking sales conversations, analyzing them and giving insights out of them. What has changed and what is constantly evolving is, thinking about who's the primary user of the product, what are their main pain points, what are the main things that they're looking to get done, and how do we support them better in doing it, right? So, for example, when we started building the product, a lot of our focus was in helping sales managers coach their sales teams. And the assumption was that, in a sales team, you always have somebody who's doing X in revenue and somebody else who's doing maybe 3 times that or 5 times that. If I can help some of the people who are not doing so well learn from the people who are doing really well, then, I can show an immediate impact on the revenue. But that doesn't happen, as easily. And human beings are not machines, so you can't suddenly say, turn on this tap and switch off that valve, and the water flows in a new direction.
Mm.
Um, so that's uh, so that's kind of been one of the reasons why the product has evolved differently from what we initially anticipated. Um, and so what we realized was that while sales coaching is something that managers like to think about and talk about, it is not something that they're always able to make time for. And so the other thing that we learned through that journey was that one of the most important things that managers care about is meeting the quota, right? And therefore, what can we do in helping them get better visibility into that pipeline, right? Which of my deals are really going to close, which are not going to close this month? Will I hit the number that I'm looking for? So yeah, so those are the kind of things that we've had to shift. Also, we initially thought that we would, maybe this could be a product for a more horizontal use case or a more horizontal user base, right? But again, that's something that we've decided to stay away from and just go deeper into the sales space. So, yeah.
Okay. What would you say are some of the metrics that you regularly measure or stay on top of to understand how your venture is doing or how satisfied your customers are or anything?
Um, so I think uh, how the customers, it it keeps changing from where you are in the journey and what you're trying to optimize for, right? Like today we have a company level dashboard where we track a few different things, right? So we kind of basically look at it as tracking the customer through their journey, right? So what we start with is looking at the visitor numbers on the website, right? Looking at the leads that are generated every week, then looking at what are the revenue numbers and what are the deals that we've closed, and then looking at the product usage stats for each of those customers, right? So that's kind of one way we think about, what we should track, right? Like who's coming in, are they signing up, are we able to win them over, and if we are able to win them over, are they be able to see value in the product? But if you're really early stage, some of these metrics might not be that relevant, right? Like you might not yet have a cadence for generating website traffic. You might have, revenue numbers that don't change every week. So in those cases, you kind of have to think about what are the smaller metrics that you want to measure that help you see progress in the right direction.
Is there a North Star metric that you have which truly reflects all other metrics?
Um, I mean, I think for any company, right, very often the North Star really is the revenue number that they are generating, right, or the ARR number. So I would say that we definitely track that ARR number. But I think as we mature and as we start to focus more on the entire journey from a customer's perspective, the metric that we are now beginning to track is the NPS score.
Any growth hacks that you have experimented or been successful at to acquire more customers?
Um, so, honestly, I think the biggest growth hack is your own customers, right? If you can get your customers to love the product and to talk about it, right, there is nothing that works better than that. And I think that that is something that maybe we learned a little bit late, but what has really helped us in our growth journey has been, the testimonials and um, feedback that our customers have shared on different forums across the board, and which is where a lot of our new users find us, right? So that's been kind of a growth hack for us. Of course, if your product has in any way any type of inbuilt virality, it makes a lot of sense to also leverage that. Right. So in our case, for example, our bot joins all of the sales meetings to be able to record them. But what that means is that our customers, buyers are also privy to that bot, and they often ask, what's that? Why do you use it? And that's how they discover us. So that's definitely something I would recommend. If your product naturally has a virality engine that can be built out of, then that's something to leverage.
Okay. Now that you have come so far, can you say what is your vision as a company for the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever time frame you have?
Yeah, so for us, the vision for Wingman is really to help sales teams get more successful. And what we want to do is we want to take, the whole very old school way of keeping track of the most important piece of information that exists for a business, and using that, yeah. So basically, helping people, helping sales teams get more successful without having to rely on old school systems like CRMs.
Okay. Uh, what are the different challenges that you have faced as an entrepreneur so far to build a venture and grow it?
Um, I think the biggest challenge I've faced as an entrepreneur is just not realizing, how all consuming this can be, right? And you begin to sleep and dream and wake up all thinking about the company that you're building. And while that doesn't sound like much of a challenge, but I think over a period of time, it's very important to manage that kind of obsession, and make sure that you don't burn yourself out. I would say that's definitely a big challenge of being an entrepreneur.
Speaking of burnout, now you'll have to tell us how you have been coping up with the challenge. What is the trick that you play when you get stressed, or you feel tired or lose focus on your work?
Um, so I think the simple hack is to have something that is as interesting to you outside of work as work itself. And I'm fortunate enough to have a few of those things. So one is I like to play board games. And through the pandemic, that's something that I've been able to do. And having some sort of a interest that is relaxing and social really helps, right? The second is I have a kid, and that definitely brings in a lot of discipline into my life and makes sure that I have something else to think about. Yeah, I would say that the remedy to burnout, or the antidote to burnout, is making sure that you have something else that you enjoy doing, and that you're able to do regularly.
Okay. Uh, Last few questions. What would you say is the meaning of entrepreneurship to you? How would you define the word entrepreneur?
So I think the one thing, it's a tough one because it means so many things, right, depending on the context. But um, I think the simple definition would be someone who takes measured risks, um, and constantly iterates.
Okay, that's a very precise definition. Uh, as an entrepreneur, what are the different lessons that you have learned which we can take away and apply to our ventures? Give us some learning lessons. This is the final question that I have for you.
So I think the biggest lesson as an entrepreneur that we need to remember is that it's not a sprint, right? And I think we've all heard that being said. But when you start to think about it as a marathon, a marathon runner doesn't start out in full steam and then get tired and just drop off, right? And I think a lot of times we all make that mistake, not just with ourselves but also with our team members. So I think one of my biggest lessons is to not have the mentality of saying that I'll do a quick hackathon on this and I will get this done. And very often those things can be more counterproductive in the long run. Um, so yeah, I think that is one important lesson. The second lesson that I have learned is don't try to reinvent everything. Right. When we take on the journey of entrepreneurship, we are very motivated by being innovative. But you don't have to innovate on everything, right? Like if there are best practices around things that already work, you're much better not recreating the wheel on that, right? Whether that is something simple as, how do you manage a team, or how do you get your accounts done, or whatever else, right? Like don't try to build everything from scratch. Like I've seen entrepreneurs who will create their own templates of Excel sheets to manage their accounts, right? You'd much rather invest in a software for $10 a month that makes sure that it syncs up with your bank accounts and helps you manage those things. So be very choosy about where you want to innovate, right? Don't just innovate for the sake of innovating. And that's something that we all need to remember. And the third thing I would say that I've learned through this journey is that the best way to learn on this journey is from others who are just a little bit ahead of you. And to talk to and build that network of founders, because um, if you don't do that, then you'll be making the second mistake, which is you'll be reinventing everything.
Well, learning from others who are ahead of you is what we are trying to do at TLI. Thanks for your time, Shruti. It was absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing about your journey. I would say my best wishes for Wingman.